Hello, Dane. I want to go over some of the key patterns that I've observed in relationships, and hopefully I'll learn a little bit more in the articulation or through putting it into words. And depending on where you're at, there may be a few insights in here for you as well. So, one thing that I think is a very useful pattern to understand is the four brains in relationship. So we have the reptilian brain, the rational or pattern organizing brain, the empathic or human brain, and the transcendent or divine brain. Now, whether or not you can cut out a certain area of the brain and say, this is the transcendent brain or not, it's still a very useful framework to understand that these are the four primary operating systems that the human animal and human being uses, and that they exist in parallel. In other words, in any moment that you're interacting with another human animal or a human being, you have a certain percentage of reptilian, rational, empathic, and transcendent. So in one moment, you might be 15% transcendent, 70% human or empathic, 30% rational, and 30% reptilian or sociopathic. Now, this is important to understand because, as you probably have noticed by now, people send out mixed messages, mixed signals. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that the reptilian brain is diametrically opposed to the empathic and transcendent brain. So the reptilian brain and its operating system boils down to might is right. And you can see this in the different factions that go to war will traditionally pray to God to win. And you will see a certain tendency in the foundations of the human psyche to say something along the line of God was on my side. I won, therefore I was right. And from the reptilian perspective, from the sociopathic perspective, this is absolutely true, right? If you're playing chess, chess is a sociopathic game, right? You are trying to kill the other person's queen and force a forfeit of the other party's territory by checkmating their king. There is nothing friendly about chess or war. There is something reptilian, something sociopathic. And so the good player in chess is the better reptile. The good player in war, the great general, is the better reptile. And the language or the currency of the reptilian brain is fear. Fear of superior mass or superior competency being used to dominate a smaller mass, inferior competency. And might is right. Winning is the name of that game. Right? If you find that raping people as a reptile, if you find that raping people throws the enemy into a rage where they stop thinking and then will fall into a trap and be murdered 2 or 3 times more efficiently than a thinking and coherent enemy, then raping is the right thing to do from the sociopathic perspective, right? Now, this is where the tension comes in. A human being, what makes a human rather than an animal is the distinction between the reptilian brain and the human brain, right? So if you are in a battle with a reptile or with somebody's reptilian brain, you have 2 ways of winning that battle. One, you must use superior competency, superior strength, superior mass to kill, to beat, to disable your opponent, and thus gain dominance. Or you help them to become a human being, right? It's very important to understand that while the body is the same for the human animal and the human being, the behavior is completely different, right? A crocodile will wait for the 5-year-old to walk a little bit behind their parents, right? Usually the 5-year-old sees a butterfly or whatever, and they walk behind the parents, or they're too small so they can't keep up. The crocodile does not go for a fair fight, right? The crocodile goes to win. And understanding, perhaps through experience, that older human animals, human beings, carry guns or put up a fight or, might get help, a crocodile will go for the 5-year-old. Now, a human being with a blend of reptilian, this is a very interesting blend, the blend of honor and the reptilian brain. So as you're moving from the reptilian program to the human program, you might say something like, I disagree with you. Okay, I challenge you to a duel. Now, a reptile would never challenge someone to a duel because it decreases the chances of winning. You don't challenge someone to a duel and alert your opponent. You stab them in the back, you take out a gun and shoot them, you put a poison in their drink before they know you're around if you're trying to take out an enemy, right? But if it's a sports dynamic to test the strength, right, then you might challenge an opponent to a match or to a duel or to a competitive game, and then play within certain containers, right, to test the mettle, to test the strength of an opponent, right? But as a human being, right, so you have this interesting juxtaposition of an honorable reptilian encounter to find the victor, right? And then, you help, if you knock your opponent down and they can't get up for the count of 10, right? You help them up, you shake hands, and you say, okay, at the end of it all, we're a human being. We're not just going to, go take this as far as it could go. And so you have a transcendence. I want to engage in a reptilian activity where my goal is to punch you up as much as possible and knock you out, and beat you publicly and humiliate you publicly. And then once I've achieved my gain, I'll help you up. So it's a very interesting posture that is only seen in the human species, as far as I'm aware. So life is up to something a little odd there. But a pure human being, a pure empathic operating system is if someone needs help, you help them. You don't try and beat them in the first place, right? And so the two codes that dictate or differentiate reptile or human is the reptile looks at someone's weakness and their pain and their misfortune and their despair and says, how can I capitalize? This is where you have capitalism. How can I capitalize on your pain, your misfortune, your terror, right? You have just had a scare, right? You just saw your neighbor's house blow down. So I'm going to sell you an insurance policy right when you're most terrified because you'll pay a higher premium, right? So I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to come selling insurance, and I'm going to sell you as high a price as I can to capitalize on your fear, right? Now, if you can't pay your debt, then I will take the opportunity of your vulnerability to put the highest penalty that I am capable of in order to extend the terms, right? So you often have the bait and switch game in capitalism, right? Where you get a 2.9% interest rate introductory, but if you don't pay it, and they don't want you to pay it, right? If you don't pay it back by this time, then it jumps up to 26%. Then if you don't pay the 26% on time, then you get a $100 late fee, and then you get a penalty on this and that, and then you get a penalty on not paying the penalty on time. And pretty soon you owe them everything, right? And they'll take as much as they possibly can because the exchange is of a predatory nature. Oh, goody, your husband got sick. You couldn't make a loan payment. We've got you now. Let's jump up and charge you more interest and a penalty just because you really need help at this moment, right? And so capitalism, you have all military mass, all weaponry, all technology that is organized to cause fear in other people, right? This is the reptilian brain, right? Now, one of the camouflages of the reptilian brain is for a noble cause, right? We're going to kill you for a noble cause. You don't agree with Christianity, right? You think that, chanting and dancing, you think that that's the way to worship the divine, but really you should be bowing to Jesus, right? So we're going to kill you, right? The Christian missionaries, the Inquisition, etc. We're going to kill you, or you can do it our way. What's our way? Well, not killing people and forgiving and turning the other cheek and listening to Jesus and not to other people. But we'll kill you if you don't listen to us, right? So there's very interesting kind of blends, right? We're going to rid the world of terror by dropping bombs on people's weddings in case there's a terrorist there. So it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? It's reptilian, fear-based dominance for a higher cause, right? In order to what? Help the world, right? And so this, but certainly you can see it where you have compartmentalized empathy. Like I love my family, or I'm at least willing to die protecting them, but I don't care about anyone else, right? And so you can have pockets where the empathic brain is operating like I love myself, but I don't care about anyone else. So if it benefits me, I will kill, I will steal, I will embezzle, I will lie, I will cheat because I love me, right? Or I love my mistress, right? My mistress has to have the finest jewels, right? So I will steal and embezzle and lie and, get people to sell their retirement funds and make trades so that I can up my commissions so that I can, bring a higher quality diamond to my mistress. So you have interesting combinations, but a human body is always thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And it always has a ratio of these 4 different brains in different combinations. So the reptile sees someone in pain, a distressed property, and immediately thinks maybe I could force them to sell it at half price if I offer them cash now and tell them the offer is off the table in the next 10 hours, right? So they can't get other options. They're really scared. They need the money for a hospital bill. It's now or never. Why never? Why not? What, you don't want the property tomorrow? No, I don't want you to have the opportunity to get a better offer. And I'm counting on your fear right now. If I could just, it's now or never, right? And so that's reptilian response to pain, to tragedy. Now, empathic response can be measured by 2 questions. The first question is, who is in the most pain and where is the biggest pain located? Empathy goes outside the individual. It expands to the other. So the empathic person looks at the circle. For example, in many neighborhoods in the United States, the greatest pain might be found in the homeless person who feels unwelcome, ashamed, and helpless, and unwanted, sleeping out in the field or under a bridge. So who is in the most pain? That's the first question. And it's being asked not for how can we exploit, that's reptilian, because the reptile asks that same question. Who is in the most pain and the most fear? That's the first question for the empath and the reptile. But the reptile wants to know, how can I exploit that for more for me at the expense of everyone else? That's irrelevant, basically. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but it's the best for me. Now, the empath, having identified the nexus of pain within the circle, within the community, asks the next question: how can we help? The empath extends their identity to the entire group, so it's always we with an empath. How can we respond to help those that are in the most pain, right? So how do you read then? Are you in a sociopathic environment? Are you in a human or empathic environment? Is it 50-50? Is it 20% human, 80% reptile? Well, it's as simple as this. You look at where the group is directing their attention. The most sociopathic groups direct the most hatred, the most judgment, the most alienation, the most dissociation, the most hostility and blame, and give the most pain to the most vulnerable constituent in the circle, right? So you might take the person who can't defend themselves and hire an attorney and pin the crime on them. That's the epitome of sociopathic, right? You blame the scapegoat, right? You beat up and bully the most vulnerable person in the school, right? because you win that way and you can humiliate them, and everyone stands by and does nothing, right? You're in pure reptilian territory. So the thing to understand is that, if an empath and a reptile do business together, right? The empath is going to give the benefit of the doubt to the reptile. The empath is going to be worried about how the reptile feels. And the reptile is going to be worried about how the reptile feels. And the reptile is not going to give the benefit of the doubt. And the reptile will look for the opportunity to take from the empath, but the empath will look for areas to give to the reptile, right? And so this is, a dynamic where the viral nature of identity, and identity is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. Empaths feel more pain and more pleasure than reptiles, than sociopaths. So when a sociopath hurts an empath, the empath feels more pain by maybe 500% than the reptile. The reptile is dissociative and so has no pain at all, like, well, you deal with it, right? Now, one of the ways that reptilian identity spreads is if you cannot stop a reptile from behaving like a reptile, like a sociopath, and you do not have the skill to remove yourself from the proximity of the reptile, then as long as you stay in empathic territory within your brain, within your operating system, you will feel enormous pain about being hurt, being betrayed, being used. The reptile feels no pain at all. But if you descend into reptilian territory, you become numb, right? That's the gift of the reptilian brain, is you're not a human being. You cannot love in a human sense. You cannot feel in a human sense. You must numb and cut off from your feelings to be a good sociopath, right? But that includes your own feelings. That's why a reptile can hurt you without remorse, but also without feeling any pain. An empath says, oh God, that's really gotta hurt. I hope I didn't hurt their feelings. An empath worries about those things because they know what it feels like. How do they know what it feels like? Because they're in touch with their own feelings. A reptile, a sociopath, does not know what it feels like because they've shut down their own feelings. Why has a reptile shut down their own feelings? It's always the same. It's always trauma. Overwhelming pain that the community did not respond to. Right? So sociopathic communities breed sociopathic people. Sociopathic people create sociopathic communities. Now, if there's one empath surrounded by 20 reptiles, and the 20 reptiles are lying, betraying, stealing, doing the things that reptiles do to get more, and the empath is behaving honorably and feeling the pain of 20 people lying, betraying, stealing, using, laughing, being cruel, it's too much pain for one person to deal with. So usually what they do is they shut down their feelings, they shut down their empathic system, and become more reptilian themselves, right? So you can assess how reptilian a culture is by how many reptiles that culture produces. You can assess how empathic a culture is by how much the empathic operating system is predominantly used statistically within the group. Now, the traditional approach would be to view the reptile as bad. That fucking goddamn sociopath just raped that poor innocent girl, right? We've got to what? We've got to kill him. We've got to get him in jail. We've got to beat some sense into the reptile, right? Now, there's a complex set of perspectives going on in that reaction. The reaction is to take the action that was done and react it, right? To do it again, just directed back. So a sociopath doesn't care about other people, but does care about themselves. And so one of the things that you find is that with police and military and bullies and lawyers and big people with strong muscles, all these different forms of competency that can inflict pain, financial pain, social pain, physical pain, legal pain. There's a tremendous amount of nice behavior that is manipulated or facilitated by fear, right? In other words, thieves generally behave nicely in a very well-guarded bank, right? Now, the same group of people, right, in a reptilian culture, it's held together by fear. So the same group of people, if there's piles of $100 bills and no one's there, and you're sure you won't get caught, the same group of people will steal bundles of hundreds by the thousands. But no, I'm not robbing a bank if I might get caught. In other words, the reptilian brain is acting with enlightened self-interest, right? So an empath, right? An empath says this is other people's money that they've deposited and needs for their retirement and all of that. And it doesn't matter if I'll get caught. It doesn't matter if I want to buy a few more Rolls Royces. These people, right, we have to look at what it's like to be them, right? And so an empath does not change their behavior, whether there's a gun pointed in their face, don't steal the money or I'll shoot, or whether there's no one there and nobody will ever know. But a reptile does, right? A reptile is held in check by fear. This is why, if you are in a reptilian culture, it's good to have strong friends, right? So what's the kind of classic motif in American culture, right? The weak guy shows up. It looks like he could be bullied. It looks like he could be stolen from. So the bullies seize on the opportunity. We're going to steal his money. We're going to beat him up. But then this is the great mythology, right? This is the sweetest point in the American cult, right? Just as the bullies are about to steal the money in this, then what? Armed machine guns come out that, my dad's going to beat you up and blah, 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 right? We've got a more powerful reptilian army. And what happens? Then the bullies melt away and they get scared, right? They were going to scare the victim. Now they're scared, right? So they're acting as bullies. And then the reaction is the defense to be a bigger bully, right? So we're bullies. And then the ideal reaction is to be a bigger bully, right? Because in the law of superior mass, the law of mass says that when a pinball collides with a bowling ball, the bowling ball continues, the pinball goes flying. Sociopathic physics is the law of the pinball and the bowling ball, right? Don't go up against the government. Why? Because they're a bigger reptile. You don't think the government is stealing your money, lying to you, embezzling, taking deals, taking bribes, giving the job to their friends, wasting money because it's not there. No, right? Your government has a strong reptilian contingency, but we're the big one, right? You see, you go up against your government, we'll show you, we'll take your tax money, we'll bash down your door, right? And beat the shit out of you because we're the big ones, right? We're bigger reptiles than you, thanks to you having the stupidity of trusting us with your tax money. You think a big company is going to say, gee, you're right, we did poison you by accident or because it was expedient to do so. Here's a check for $10 million that's not even enough to cover your child. No. They're going to take you to court to wear you down because they know a reptile says they're in grief, like they want to bury their child. They'll probably take a $20,000 settlement if you just give it to them, right? But you can't sign, you can't go after them, right? So, the reptilian territory is all about the big ones dominating and abusing the small ones. So you have the perpetrator and the victim. And usually the witness in a sociopathic culture, the witness has the most power. That's the majority. The witness says, I'm staying out of it. Why? Because it would take a little bit of my time and energy to protect the victim. I don't want to go up against this gang, right? Of course, if the whole neighborhood joins up and protects the victim, the gang isn't big enough to bully an entire neighborhood. But the neighborhood melts away, right? The gang is coming, will leave the victim alone with the perpetrator because we are sociopathic. We don't want anything to do that might possibly cause us some inconvenience, right? It's purely sociopathic. Out of fear, that's the currency. Now, in a sociopathic culture, everyone has been traumatized, and a reptilian defense system has been developed by each individual to cope with the next anticipated trauma. And that is usually, you have to then get through someone's defenses to start dealing with them as a human being, right? You try and smile to a stranger in a reptilian culture, and they immediately think, what are you up to, right? You can be a human being just being nice in a reptilian culture, and they will get more and more paranoid because you're not supposed to be nice. And so there must be something really horrible going on, right? And so if you think through the implications of this, you can be in a transcendent state where you feel one with all things. And a reptile will look at you who does not feel one with all things and say, ooh, that person's in a generous mood. Let's hit him up for a donation to an important charity, right? And then just steal the money, right? So, there's, and I think that one of the areas that is quite useful to understand is, first of all, just to look at the pattern of how you have not wanted to examine the human animal in its cruelty, in its sociopathic hate for itself, for others, and exploitation of empathy and transcendence, right? So that's definitely look at the human cult and its shadow, its reptilian nature clothed, right? Clothed in sheep's clothing. And in doing so, you may, you have had a lot of impatience at other people's distrust of us. It's like, we don't lie, we don't steal, we're trying to be helpful. Why are they so suspicious This makes no sense, right? But here's another way of looking at it, and that's partly the theme in this, in this exploration. Another way of looking at it is you don't have enough sense to understand the sheer amount of cruelty and betrayal going on in this cult that would breed and make it a reasonable response to fear the unknown. And when you first meet someone, you're in an unknown place, right? And so, you have not had the intelligence to understand the sheer level of cruelty that other people have experienced regularly and the rarity of true empathy. And they have not had the wisdom and experience to understand the kindness, the luminosity of just wanting to make someone happy for the joy of seeing them happy, right? You've always delighted in seeing people happy. And you have been punished, distrusted, hidden from, blockaded so many times because that is an unusual pattern, right? And so one of the reasons I'm telling you this is after roughly 70 to 90% failure in being perceived accurately, right? You do something out of transcendence or out of empathy, and it is reacted to as if it is worse than just neutrality. What's that up to? With women, you see someone hurt, or you try and be helpful, and they immediately think you're trying to have sex with them when you have no interest in having sex with them, and you realize now I feel less seen, and I'm getting more pushback than if I was just sociopathic and said, fuck you, it's not my problem. Then they would respect that, right? What's going on here, right? So this is what's going on, right? And so you've generally put the criticism out there and basically said, gosh, what a fucked up world that they can't tell the difference between kindness and manipulation. What a fucked up world. It's punishing kindness. That's fucked up, right? And that has been one of our biggest frustrations. And that's led to, frankly, a lot of rage, right? Bitterness, rage, cynicism, that we try and do something good and we get slapped for it, right? So fuck it, right? And so that's how it works, is you descend. Like when you're empathic and you are dishonored, it hurts more than if you're sociopathic and dishonored. And so it's easier to numb out. But I want you to understand that the misunderstanding goes both ways, right? If you look at someone in an innocent and naive state, say, oh, it'd be so nice to comfort this person, they're obviously in pain. And you have no concept of what the typical person has gone through and how that's been exploited and manipulated and all the horror that's led to. Then you aren't seeing them as much as they're not seeing you, right? And you don't want to see them because it's so painful, right? You think, oh, how could people do that? Right? You don't want to see them because it's so painful, but how it's backfired, meaning not going into and really understanding other people, has led to getting bitterer and harder, right? And it doesn't lead to wisdom, right? Wisdom is learning to actually see who is capable of being loved in a direct, vulnerable way. Because many people are not. Many people, you try, love equals closeness. Closeness equals fear of being hurt and being out of control. And the primary agenda is to stay in control and not be hurt. So love is actually the enemy for someone in that defense pattern, right? And so you have to expand your understanding to understand for how many people love is the enemy, intimacy is the enemy, sex is the enemy. Being seen is the enemy. Because a reptile takes what they see and hurts the other person with it to get what they want, right? And when that happens more of the time than not, then the default mode becomes attack intimacy, attack sexuality, attack love, attack transparency, attack proximity. You're getting close to me. Get away. Bye. I've got to go. I'm busy, right? Let's keep busy so no one can get close. Right? So that's a very lonely culture to be in. But that loneliness goes both ways, meaning you don't see them and they don't see you. Right? And so if you really see them, you will go slower. You will understand how you're seen, and then they will see you. Right? So it goes, that's I think a really important pivot that I'm still working on, frankly, because it's no fun, of course, to see how absolutely miserable so many people are because of so many absolutely miserable experiences, and that their primary mode is to put on a performance, to hide the misery, and then put on a performance and pretend to be in a different place than they're being, right? So I would say that's really the key. Now, there are so many different levels and layers of human interaction. It's important to understand that sexuality, for example, right? Why do some people love rape, right? You've probably met people where, women, they ask you basically to rape you. I have a fantasy of someone raping me. Would you mind raping me or whatever? Like, why is that coming up? Like, why would someone say, I feel really aroused if someone will rape me, not a stranger, but someone I like, why is that coming up, right? Well, what that's saying is that a lot of their psychology is in reptilian territory. And so if you just be really kind to a reptile, there's nothing arousing about it. To arouse a reptile, you have to dominate or you have to submit. You have to fight, flight, or freeze, or please. So prostitution, raping, being raped, dominant submission, that's very, very engaging. Commands complete attention when two people are primarily in the reptilian brain. But it means nothing if you're primarily in the empathic brain. I don't want to rape you, I like you. I don't want to be raped, I just want to be with you, right? That's an empath. I want to adjust my behavior that's more comfortable to you. You like this? Is that more comfortable to you? Yeah, I like this. Well, good. That's what I want to do because I want to make you happy. And that's the language of an empath. Now, this is sickening to a reptile. Oh, so disgusting. Just fuck me, right? And that's sickening to an empath. They're very different operating systems. I don't want to fuck you. I don't want to take you. I don't want to dominate you. I want to be with you. I want to connect with you. I want to bring you joy. If we have sex, if not, I just want to be with you, right? Even more so in transcendence, I want to be with the world. I want to open my senses, my awareness to all that is, the beauty of all that is. So there are some very interesting perspective changes around all of this, right? So, it's easy, of course, to judge the reptile. But let's look at a couple of things. If you are in a reptilian state, then reptilian sex is going to be 10 times more meaningful, honest, and integrated than pretending to be nice. Because you're dissociating from where you are, right? So you could say, well, don't be a beast, or you could say, no, be where you are, right? So that's that, right? If you are afraid you will be judged for being a reptile, but you feel like a reptile, and so you pretend to be spiritual, and, oh, would you like this? But I just want to fuck you, right? Well, then it's more honest and useful to be where you are than to judge where you are and try and pretend and try to be something else, right? So, a lot of these things go both ways. Not only that, if you're in a reptilian state, it is for one reason. Your cult has been primarily reptilian in its relationship to you. Truly empathic cults produce empathic human beings. And being a human being is generally more enjoyable than being a reptile. That's why it's an evolutionary step forward. So if you're not getting the pleasure of being a human being because you are in a reptilian state, it is because at key moments in infancy, when you were most helpless, the world was reptilian to you, either through ignorance or through cruelty or through scarcity. And scarcity correlates to competence. Right? The most competent person imaginable creates all of their needs and all of their preferences out of the boundless energy available in the universe to do so. Right? The most competent person imaginable fulfills all of their own needs and preferences and then some and shares them with other people. If you lack that competency, then you have scarcity. If you have scarcity, you have pain. If you have pain, you have fear of pain. You are now fear-based. When you are afraid of pain, you will do things to other people you know are not right or human to get through the day, to cope. I know I shouldn't be stealing from you. I'm sorry, but I need the money. Why? Because I don't have the skill to create the money in some other way, right? I mean, anyone that could snap their fingers and have trillions of dollars doesn't go and embezzle at their lousy company a few hundred. They snap their fingers and have trillions of dollars. Now, anyone who can't snap their fingers and have trillions of dollars lacks the skill of doing that. Right? Maybe they lack the skill of having billions, and maybe they lack the skill of having millions, and maybe they lack the skill of having thousands and hundreds and ones, right? And at a certain point in a capitalist cult, you can't meet your needs without capital, right? So, and that's where people start, right? But do they learn the skill to transcend that state, to transcend that reality? So good luck with this, Dane. I'd be curious to hear what bits you relate to, don't relate to, because there's two sides to all of this, right? Everything has its place, right? And of course, it's always nice to be, in the quote, better place. But of course, if we could be in the better place, we would be. If we knew how, if we had the competency, right? And it takes growing and developing that competency, or growing and developing the grace to allow other people with that competency to come in and affect our lives. Right? And that whole process takes time, thousands of years to slowly iterate, to move. We've moved in some thousands of years. Used to be we were 100% reptile. And then we were 100% rational reptile, just competent sociopaths. But then at some point, the human brain and empathy entered in. And then at some point, the transcendent brain entered in, right? But these processes take thousands of years to learn the skill as a species.